I'd love for you to have a little conversation with us about, number one, the importance of being ourselves, the importance of having our full expression show up now, and then anything else, any other direction you'd like to go in.
That's wonderful. And if it's okay with you, Suzy, I wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit of my experience working with Johnny, who has, or if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So, hi everybody. I mean, compared to all of you in terms of scientific and medical understanding, I don't have a wide experience with autism, but I do have some from about 9 years ago, when I used to work once a week with a fantastic, now young man, who at the time was a young boy, called Johnny. And I was shown, as were some of the other people who work with Johnny every week, some of the sunrise methods to work with Johnny. So if I go back in myself 9 years ago, my understanding of what was going on at the time has changed, because 9 years ago I was a different person, and I was new to understanding and seeing sensitivity at higher levels. But one of the things that I remember very strongly that hit me, I just at the same time started doing this work for people and doing readings. Literally, it was all around the same time. And I remember in a channel that I did for Johnny's mom, one of the things that came through, which I think in some ways confused people at the time, and I also was very struck by it. It said that Johnny is a great teacher to all of you. Mm. And of course you guys understand that and know that to be true, but back then that was a little different, because even though Johnny's mom was always incredibly open, I remember that we used to have these group meetings, and I remember when I said it, my sensitivity told me that a few people didn't quite get it or found it an odd statement. But my understanding looking back now, and with the way that my own energy field has allowed itself to expand over the years, is that one thing that I didn't really understand at the time was my sense with those with autism is that their energy field is so wide compared to a person who isn't so far on the scale, but also that there are points. Whereas, for example, if we were looking at this visually, and you have an image of yourself in your mind, and there is a big circle around you, and that circle is your energy field. The other day when I was reflecting on coming to talk to you guys, I was just going through it in myself, and I kind of heard from the Z. They said, well, autistic people go to points. And usually people who aren't so far down the scale don't go to points. We tend to be a little more rounded. Mm-hmm. But this is why they experience things so intensely. And the thing that I have come to understand myself about being a human being, the more sensitive I've become, is in the same way that when you're in the ocean and you're swimming along and the temperature's one temperature and all of a sudden you swim through this very, very warm patch, I understand now that the world is composed in the same way, and certain areas of land, certain energies created by a group of people get left, certain energy pockets get left behind. So my understanding is two things are going on for people with autism. In the same way that animals have this higher degree of sensitivity to all of the energies in a room, on the one hand, they're dealing with relating to the human in front of them, and on the other hand, they're picking up on everything that's going on. And they've either learned to successfully squirrel themselves away into smaller parts of themselves in order to not be oversensitized, or they're flying out there going through all of these things that are unfiltered to them, but to us that we have managed to not even get close to. So that's the understanding I have of it at this point that I didn't maybe see 9 years ago when I used to work with Johnny. It's
interesting, too, Lee, because we've also watched that you can take a child diagnosed with autism and, you said something about putting them, they're dealing with the person that's in front of them. And what's interesting from my vantage point is you can put them in front of somebody who is kind of coherent in their own energy, who knows themselves as being themselves in their own energy. And in that place, that child will respond and react in one way. And you put them into another setting with another individual or groups of individuals whose energy is fearful or kind of worried, concerned, angry, and they will reflect that back as well. It's like, you know, that part about not being filtered. Like, how do you filter out? They can't filter out the coherence, and they can't filter out the anger. So, you know, they seem to be being a beautiful mirror for both.
And working at such a high intensity compared to people who are lower on the scale, and hence having the intense reactions because they're experiencing things sometimes in excruciating ways to them. And my kind of experience over the years is I've looked at what we would call minority groups in society, and I myself am a gay man, so I've also had a personal kind of, oh, that's interesting, to kind of be in a supposed minority group. And the thing that the Z's have said to me is that basically it's all to keep bringing planetary balance and opening. So in the same way that I would see that you have a large number of not just heterosexual males and females anymore in order to try and open up the idea that male, female are equal, and there is a fluency in those energies within all of us. It's not as rigid as society has created it so far. It's also the same for me around desensitization of us and the rise of the amount of people with higher levels of autism coming onto the planet now, because we have to reclaim our sensitivity. And someone who, like many of you, has probably been doing that over the years, as we know, that's not easy. So I think in a way, the challenges that we perceive autistic people are going through are the same challenges that many of us then go through when we open up, because as we know, awakening and becoming more sensitive, it's not always a walk in the park. You know, you encounter things both inside yourself and outside yourself that you experience very, very differently than you allow yourself to feel more.
I think it's kind of a standard joke in some ways, because as this process really is about twofold. It's about knowing yourself, and it's also about opening to those higher aspects of who you are. And simultaneously, I think we each feel a little bit more autistic all the time.
Oh, yeah.
For that reason.
Definitely. And you know, you mentioned earlier, Suzy, you were talking about the different reaction that someone with a higher level of autism, and I keep saying that because I know that we're all on the scale somewhere. It seems strange. It seems strange to call people with autism autistic, you know, but compared to us, even though I understand there is a difference. For me, it's the difference that you spoke about regarding whether there is a person who is very open with them and very authentic with them, or someone who is more closed, more shut down. It's the difference between me going to, say, a shopping mall, or me going out into the land, or being at a place where people are celebrating because there's an outdoor wedding. You know, the vibrational difference between the group of humans in those two spaces has a direct effect on us. And as much as many people are trying to master, you know, their own sense of balance, their own sense of stability, even though I would definitely say I'm more balanced than I've ever been in my life, I also now have a greater understanding of how it's a constant balancing act. It's not developing one mode of behavior that you then stay stuck in. It's actually being able to be as diverse as possible, and through the challenging experiences that we have as human beings, we start to create more of a toolkit inside us to deal with anything that kind of comes up. And of course, as you master certain areas in yourself, you then get to look at the areas that you haven't yet mastered.